Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Niger Delta youths protest oil block licenses awarded to outsiders. The Niger Delta Community Youth Association has strongly opposed the 2024 oil block licenses awarded to non-indigenous entities, calling for a reversal of the 2022, 2023, and 2024 rounds. They demand that 40% of the blocks be allocated to indigenous investors from the Niger Delta. Leading protests in various cities, the group argues that the allocation is unjust, particularly given the environmental damage caused by oil exploration in their communities. They assert that the NUPRC's actions violate the 2021 Petroleum Industry Act, which supports indigenous rights and call for better environmental remediation and local employment opportunities. The protest highlights the marginalization of Niger Delta communities, urging that the Senate and relevant authorities to ensure a fairer distribution of Nigeria's oil wealth and address their long-standing grievances. Joining us to discuss this morning is Kingsley Jeremiah. He's the editor of Energy and Power, The Guardian. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here today.
Fantastic. All right, so let's start with the key demands of the Niger Delta youth. So, of course, they're talking about oil block. And we know that most times it's who has money that can bid for something. And so if you have the money, you bid for it, you get it. But in this case, they're saying that it should be given to the indigenous people of the Niger Delta and not just outsider. And, you know, they obviously have a percentage that they expect should be given to these people. But in your opinion, what are some of the key demands and how do you think they've been able to communicate it with the government? Because I think communication is imperative and not just going out to protest. How do you think they've been able to communicate this even before deciding to go out to protest?
Okay, so let me first of all say that it is expected of the Niger Delta people to always press down their demand for resources that are within their region. And that has been for a very long time. They've been pushing for a series of demands that have led to benefit transfer. So this is one of those many demands that they kept pushing for that has led to, that will possibly lead to benefit transfer within the Niger Delta community. So it is justified that the people of the Niger Delta region are calling for this kind of demand from the federal government and particularly from the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. But from indications, they are asking for about 40% of the oil blocks to be given to people who are from the Niger Delta region.
Yeah.
Most of these things are better legislated than demanded. And the Petroleum Industry Act, which they equally cited, was passed into law just recently. Issues like this should have been things that are spelled out in the Petroleum Industry Act,
Yeah.
even if it is not 40%, a level of percentage. So I am worried to ask where most of the Niger Delta people were when the Petroleum Industry Act was being, as a bill was being discussed at the National Assembly before being passed into law. I remember also that the previous administration, particularly the period when the former Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, visited the Niger Delta, one of the things he said was the possibility of granting oil blocks to people from the Niger Delta region so that we can dose the tension that we are seeing from the Niger Delta region. There have been series of those kind of promises made, including issues around most oil companies relocating their headquarters to that region. So this kind of demand that you're hearing today are expected. And on the part of the Niger Delta people, it is fair. But is this something that can totally be achieved right now? I'm not very certain. A lot needs to be done for this to be achieved.
So how do you think the government has even responded to this in the first place, and even the role of some of the traditional leaders in that region?
I have not seen a direct response from the government in the past few days. We have seen this in the news, but we have seen responses to some of the grievances from the Niger Delta people over time. And if I have to um, project what the government will likely say, I do not see the government yielding to this particular demand. Historically, most people in Nigeria get oil block, possibly because they have connections that's parallel to the PIA, possibly because they have connections, they know the minister, and some of them do not have the resources to actually explore this oil block. So who should actually own oil block in Nigeria? Someone either as a Nigerian or an external investor. Someone who has the technical knowledge, someone who has the financial capacity to actually make sure that they see a way, because most of the licenses being given currently are for petroleum prospecting license. And for these licenses, it takes a period of about 6 years for you to be given an opportunity to explore and see the possibility of finding oil. If you do not have the financial capacity to actually see yourself through these 6 years, you will most likely be keeping that license for another 3 to 4 years before you find the finance to even move into the field to explore for oil. So you need the money. And when I'm talking about money here, I'm talking about the oil sector is capital intensive. You need to have the financial muscle so that you're able to spend enough to be able to explore for oil to keep yourself through this process. And through this process, you will most likely not be making anything substantial. And then, so you need a very strong bank account to be able to do that. So whosoever that is getting oil block in Nigeria should have that financial strength. Another thing is the technical capacity, which we have seen over time. Most people get oil block without having the technical capacity. And the question we ask as journalists and civil society organization is to also see the level of transparency and accountability that goes into the bidding round. What we've been seeing in recent time has been a lot more better than what we have seen in the past. Like in what just happened with the NUPLC, we've seen situations where the NNPC exploration arm was even losing some block. We see, they are losing to companies that doesn't even have the reputation of the NNPC. We are also seeing situations where oil giant like Total, we're also losing to smaller companies. Now, in this particular situation, you should be able to prove that you actually have the financial strength to do what you need to do. Unless if it is possibly legislated, like the case of the Local Content Act, where it is compulsory for 40% of whatever we do in the oil sector to come to the local community. To come from the in-country angle. So if you have legislated, for instance, about 15% or 20% involvement of the Niger Deltas in the issuance of oil block, it will be a lot more better. But since that is not in place, what the regulator will most likely do is to align with the regulation they have, the law which they already have, which is to do a competitive bidding and ensure that whosoever that has the block has the financial strength and has the technical strength to see that through. So it will take another long argument, discussion, conversation, a review of the Petroleum Industry Act for some of their demands to be met.
Okay, so the major demand obviously is the fact that they feel most of those oil block licenses are being awarded to outsiders. With this this decision that is obviously given to other people, how does that impact the local communities? And we're talking obviously the social and economic impact. So we're talking opportunities, economic opportunities, employment, resource control. How does that impact the local community?
Yeah, so I think that If you find the investors that have the financial strength, genuine people who are just not interested in getting the oil block and then keeping it somewhere, if you find those people within the Niger Delta and you give them the opportunity to explore for oil, they can speak the language of the Niger Deltans better. And then you can find these people bringing back their wealth into the region they represent. And so that's, we provide a level of benefit for the people who are from that region, and then it will help benefits transfer from the resources. And it is very important now because we have a very small transition window for the oil and gas sector. So we need to be very intentional and very determined around how we give opportunity to people to explore for oil. The Niger Delta region over time has not been taken care of the way it should be taken care of. The environment has been an issue over time. So chances are that if I am from a particular community and I am the one doing business in that community, chances are that I'll most likely protect my children, my people, than someone who is coming from the outside. It might not be, but because some of the situations we have also seen, which has led the Niger Delta to this particular issue, is the fact that most of their leaders sold them out. I expect most of the leaders within the National Assembly to have fought these fights that investors are fighting currently. And I expect most of the traditional rulers, the youth leaders within those communities to have taken this up long ago. If you start waging war when the warfare is already at your doorstep, the chances of winning might just be very, very slim. Most of the lawmakers from the Niger Delta region were in the National Assembly when the people from the northern region stood their ground for 30% profit of NNPC for oil exploration within the Niger Delta, within the northern region. They also saw how some of the companies within the northern region, just like a replica of the Odua investment company, they are exploring oil within what you see in the northern region. Although there are a level of investors within the Niger Delta region, which are states, and then 2 or 3 states coming together to do some of these things. Some of these people possibly have the strength to push through this investment. But if you push more resources, more block allocation to the people from the Niger Delta, they will be able to manage the community issue better. They speak the same language. They will also, chances are that they will also be able to address the issue regarding environmental challenges better. Most likely, they will also be able to transfer benefits back to their people better than the people who are coming from outside. Because if you're coming from outside, you most likely repatriate your fund and take it to wherever you're coming from.
All right, so I know we spoke about the PIA, and where you were saying, you asked a question, a pertinent question, that where were the people of the Niger Delta when it was being signed? At least they should have, stated it clearly there. At this point, do you think that's something that can be revisited, whereby they look at the PIA, it passed through the House, and they see that, okay, we need this allocation to these people? What can be done right now? And even for the people who have been, given these licenses already, how can they play better in that space, ensuring that the host communities, they don't feel left out, especially with the fact that they are extracting their own resources from those communities?
It will take a very long time to review the Petroleum Industry Act. And that has been in discussion from the first day the Petroleum Industry Act was passed. A lot of people have been talking about review from the very first day. Now, so the Niger Delta people possibly need to put themselves together and find a way to call for this review and possibly stand on this. If they can do it better, they possibly have to make it something that is much more of an executive approach, where the people within the National Assembly would possibly fast track that process. But you know what? I mean, what it takes in this country to review law, and then I mean, it takes a whole lot of time. So it is not what I don't project that a review of the Petroleum Industry Act, because it always comes with a lot of interest and then a lot of disagreement. It took close to about 2 to 3 decades before we eventually saw the Petroleum Industry Act passed into law. And then I expect every review to have that level of discussion and that level of disagreement before things get passed into law. So, but then is that visible? The process has to start first before we know what will eventually happen.
All right. So, finally, what steps can the government take right now to ensure that these concerns are being addressed? Because I mean, I'm from a host community, and I can only imagine how it feels when there's exploration going on in your community, but you're not really seeing so many dividends of that thing that you've been blessed with. So what steps do you think the government, if we cannot really review the PIA right now, what other steps can the government take to ensure that these concerns are being addressed?
Now, so we need to find a way to implement the Petroleum Industry Act, particularly the host community fragment of it, to the letter. And the benefit to the host community that we already have in the Petroleum Industry Act, let's even begin from there first. The host community trust fund across the community, some of them are still not set up as of now. The communities have to come together and agree on some of those things. The process of setting them up takes a level of time because of the structure. So the communities need to keep agitating until some of these things are totally done. And the communities over time have made mentions of things that relate to administrative costs and different other regulation from the NUPLC that might impart the level of what they will eventually get. Government needs to find a way to address some of these things. Government also has to be very sincere, particularly around the way the military is deployed within the Niger Delta people. I mean, within the Niger Delta region. We have seen a level of the things that happened last year, and we have heard how some of the people from certain communities in the Niger Delta, some of their leaders even died in police custody. And some of these issues, the government needs to find a way to work on it outrightly. I know there have been a lot of engagements than we have had in the past in terms of addressing the issue within the Niger Delta region. I also saw in the 2025 budget that huge provision was made for the ex-militants within the Niger Delta region to continue the amnesty program that the previous governments introduced. It would have been disastrous scrapping those kind of initiative. Yeah. And then the Niger Delta Commission, as well as the NDDC, has to be strengthened. And I'm particularly worried at this point because the more you have the energy transition prices hitting the oil sector and reducing the revenue you get from the oil sector, the more impacted the communities will be. Most of the environmental disasters within the oil communities in the Niger Deltas are not remediated as they should be yet. And so if you have reduced revenue coming from the oil sector, the capacity of those oil companies to address some of the environmental issues won't be there. The Nigerian government has also not addressed most of the environmental issue as they should. The Nigerian government has a lot of stake, a lot of share in most of the oil blocks you see through the NNPC. They are part of commitment into remitting the money that should be used for this environmental issue has been there over time and has not been properly paid. So paying attention to some of these things are things the government can do to do some of this tension. Also, there is...
Okay, yeah, you were just about to land. You wanted to land your point because we have to go now, but I'll just give you 30 more seconds.
Yeah, so there is a decommissioning regulation with the NUPLC which speak to some of the things that has to be done to clean up and then remove most of the equipment that have been used within oil facilities. Those are opportunities and areas where the Niger Delta people can benefit, one, in terms of earning money and also in terms of cleaning up places where oil has been explored over time and you no longer do anything there. Government needs to prioritize most of these issues.
All right. Thank you so much, Kingsley. It's been a pleasure having you here and just discussing this with you and having your in-depth analysis on this. I want to say thank you for joining our program this morning. Thank you so much.
Right, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're speaking with Kingsley Jeremiah, is the editor of Energy and Power, The Guardian. And we've just been looking at the fact that the Niger Delta youths have protested against the fact that oil block licenses have been given to outsiders. This is where we have to draw the curtain on the show today. Thank you so much for having the breakfast with me. My name is Rume. Paulson, I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Good morning.